The gig economy has truly changed the way that people work, and it's allowed for people to kind of have the feelings of being self-employed without actually being self-employed. With the gig economy, you can go and you can sign up for services like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, and so many others almost instantly and then start making money doing that. Whereas with a traditional 9-to-5 job, you have to go through the process of finding a job, the process of applying for a job, the process of being onboarded onto that job. It is so much more tedious to get a traditional 9-to-5 versus a job through a gig economy service. So in today's video, I want to talk about whether or not you can still make money in the gig economy and whether or not it is realistically a substitute for a traditional 9-to-5 job. So let's get started. So for those of you who don't know what the gig economy is, the gig economy is just basically getting a job or getting money through services like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, Airbnb, Turo, and so many others. It's basically saying that instead of being employed by a traditional job like a hourly wage job or a corporate job where you get paid either hourly or salary, you instead get paid as an independent contractor. You get to work on your own time, on your own schedule, and you get paid by the gigs that you can complete. For example, with Uber, you get paid however long you drive this person and you get paid by the trip. On Turo, you get paid by the rentals that you get. On Airbnb, you get paid by however many people stay in your room or in your hotel or in your apartment. So now that we know what the gig economy is, now begs the question of, can we actually make money through the gig economy, and is it a substitute for a traditional 9-to-5 job? The thing that is super tricky about this question, about the question of whether or not the gig economy is a substitute for a traditional 9-to-5, is that there are so many variables that come into play, and it really kind of comes down to the cost that it takes you to complete the services within the gig economy, how much time you dedicate to it, and what your kind of return on investment is. And these three factors really dictate whether or not the gig economy is worth it. So in order to start answering this question, let's first look at some of the average monthly earnings for some of the popular gig websites, including things like Airbnb, TaskRabbit, Lyft, Fiverr, Uber, and a few others. So you can see right here that there is a graph showing what the average and the median income is per month for these services. And for example, Airbnb is $924, TaskRabbit is $380, Lyft is $377, Uber is $364, DoorDash is $229, Postmates is $174, and GetAround is $98 per month. For those of you who don't know what GetAround is like the equivalent to Turo. So bringing the average monthly income for all of these combined to a whopping $299 per month. But the problem with looking at statistics this broad in regards to the gig economy is that there are so many different factors that go into play into this average monthly income, because the average monthly income is going to count everybody who's on that platform. But the fact of the matter is, people operate very differently on these platforms. For example, if somebody is driving for Uber 1 hour a month, they're going to bring down that earnings average quite significantly. On the other hand, if somebody's driving for 40 hours per week, they of course would earn probably much more than the average. Same goes for services like GetAround or Airbnb. If you're hosting your house or your apartment on Airbnb once every time you go on vacation, so maybe 4 or 5 times a year, you are going to bring down that average quite a lot. Whereas if you're a full-time Airbnb host that has multiple units, you of course would earn above the average. So the average monthly income for gig sites I think is too broad, and ultimately I think it's kind of meaningless, but it is still interesting to look at. So that's where instead we can look at things like the hourly rate. In a poll taken by Lyft drivers, it found that the average national rate per hour that the drivers were being paid was $18.83 per hour, meaning that on average you could expect to receive that per hour for driving for Lyft. In addition to the national average, this same poll found that the average rate per hour that drivers were being paid in the top 25 Lyft markets was $21.08. This was really interesting because it showed that even if you're in a top market, you're not going to be earning significantly more than if you're just in an average market, and for the most part you can expect to earn about $18, maybe on the high end $21. Now $18 an hour is actually I think pretty decent pay for an hourly job that doesn't require any experience, any degrees, or any sort of expertise. But the thing that's important to note here is that there is expenses that come with doing gig work. And in this same survey done by Lyft drivers, it found that the average expenses that Lyft drivers incur on an hourly basis is anywhere from $3 to $5 per hour. meaning that on average, you can expect to spend about $4 per hour just on expenses associated with running your Lyft business, which means that you really aren't making on average $18 per hour, you're really making $14 per hour. Which means that if you take expenses into account and you drive on average for 40 hours per week for 52 weeks a year, you can expect to earn just under $30,000 per year. Now, $30,000 per year is actually pretty decent. I would argue that for somebody who is just trying to get out of a financial hardship, or somebody who's a student, or somebody who is just doing this in addition to their regular job, that's a pretty good income. In fact, there is a lot of people that earn $30,000 an hour working a corporate job. And if that's the case for you, and if that's kind of what your income at home looks like, then yeah, Lyft or Uber could be an excellent choice for you. Is it going to replace a six-figure corporate job? Of course not, and probably Lyft and Uber is never going to be a sustainable option for you. But depending on your expenses and depending on what salary you're accustomed to, it can absolutely be a good option to explore. So now that we know about Uber and Lyft, what about services like Instacart, DoorDash, Postmates, Favor, and those types of food services? For those of you who don't know, DoorDash, Postmates, and Favor are services that bring you items. For example, with DoorDash, it can bring and deliver you food. It's similar to Uber Eats. For Postmates or Favor, if you want somebody to go out and purchase something for you, for example, if you're out of toilet paper in your house and you don't want to go out to buy it, you could theoretically Postmates a toilet paper order. And for Instacart, this is a service that allows for you to get your groceries delivered to you. Now, the thought process of income to expenses is very similar with these services as they were with Uber and Lyft. And that is that, yes, you have the potential to make good money, but there's also a lot of expenses that come along with that. You have your basic car maintenance expenses that you would have with Uber and Lyft, but the part of the equation that is really difficult with these types of services is the fact that they require you to get out of your car and go find items. And this is a really big time suck, which means that you could theoretically be spending an hour in a grocery store grocery shopping for somebody, and then you would only get paid maybe $15 to $20 an hour to then go bring those to them. To me, I think it requires a significantly higher amount of effort than just simply driving for Uber and DoorDash. And because of that, I don't see this as being a sustainable side gig to replace a traditional 9-to-5. I think that these are great options for people who are college students or people who just simply want to make extra money. But as a full-time job, I am skeptical. Now, before we move on to analyzing services like Airbnb, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Kover. Now, one of the biggest downsides of entering the gig economy is the lack of financial stability. I know that for me personally, the fact that I never have sick days, I don't have any sort of safety net in case I get hurt, I get injured, or I am not able to work. If I take a sick day, I know that my income is going to be cut because of it. And that's something that is really tough for a lot of gig workers, especially gig workers that have families, that have financial obligations, or that have no other way to make ends meet. This is something that deters a lot of people from entering the gig economy, and that is where Kover comes in. Kover is a financial safety net for gig workers. It is a way for you to have financial security without a traditional 9-to-5. How Kover works is you pay a monthly fee for Kover, and they offer you a lot of the same benefits that you would get with a regular 9-to-5 job. With Kover, you can have access to an income guarantee, so if you are hospitalized, if you can't work long term, Kover will cover up to 80% of your lost income. You can also have access to sick leave, 24/7 telehealth services, as well as services to bookkeeping tools and legal services. As of right now, Kover offers their services to gig workers on platforms like Uber, DoorDash, Postmates, and more, and they are continuously looking to add more and more platforms to their arsenal. Kover is really affordable, there is no contracts or long-term commitments, and the best part is that if you guys follow the link in my description below, then you get 1 free month of Kover with no strings attached, meaning that you can try out Kover on your own, and if you're not impressed or if you don't end up liking the service, you can simply cancel with no consequences. If you guys have never used Kover before, I would definitely recommend to check it out. You can do so by checking out the link in my description below. The problem with platforms like Uber, DoorDash, Instacart, Lyft, those types of services where you're actually like delivering something or you're driving around or you're completing a service is the fact that your income is directly associated with the amount of time that you invest on that platform. For example, if you drive for Uber, you're only going to get paid for however long you drive for, whether that be 40 hours a week, 20 hours a week, 60 hours a week, whatever the case is. I don't prefer gig work like that because it is just the exact opposite of passive, and it's so dependent on your time, and it makes it really hard to grow your income because of the fact that you can't multiply yourself. That's where platforms like Airbnb come in, and where I think that Airbnb truly is like the pinnacle of all gig work. Because with Airbnb, you can make it truly passive, and the amount of money that you make on Airbnb is not directly correlated with how much time you invest onto the platform like it is with Lyft or Uber. Because of this, I think that Airbnb is one of the best side gigs that you can do that can actually end up replacing a traditional 9 to 5. The way that you could do this is you could start out by renting out an extra room in your house. You could do the Airbnb arbitrage model, which is actually when you go and lease a property, and with the permission of the owner of the property, you can do Airbnb through that location. I actually have a video that I did on this a while back ago. I will link that in the description below as well as up above. But that's another interesting way to go about doing this. Another way is to simply buy properties and list them out on Airbnb. And the YouTuber Aubrey had a really interesting video on this where he interviewed somebody who redid their garage and then turned it into an Airbnb and does it almost completely and 100% passively. This was a really interesting and really unique look at how the Airbnb business model can be used in order to create truly passive income. I will link that video in the description below as well. But the fact is that there are a number of different ways that you can go about creating a really profitable Airbnb business. And depending on how you approach it, you could absolutely replace your traditional 9 to 5. That's where I think that the average of saying that the average Airbnb host earns just over $900 per month, I simply don't think that's accurate, because there are a number of Airbnb hosts that use Airbnb just to simply make money while they're not using their property, but there are a lot out there that run it like a true business and are able to make 5 or 6 figures doing so. One of the biggest questions I ask myself whenever I'm pursuing a new business idea or a new revenue stream is the question of how much time will this take? How much time and how much energy will it take out of me? Because the unfortunate reality is that there is only one of me. I can't multiply myself, and I only have 24 hours in a day. I only have 7 days a week, and I can only do so much in that time period. Because of that, as I've gotten older and as I've started pivoting different focuses in my career, I've really started emphasizing figuring out ways to make money more passively, meaning how can I make more money without dedicating more time and more energy to that income stream? This is a question that needs to be asked for anybody who's wanting to get into gig work on a full-time basis. And this is where platforms like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, that's where platforms like that simply don't work, because you can only take up so much time in your day in order to drive for those services. And as a result, it isn't the best option out there to replace a traditional 9 to 5. On the other hand, you have platforms like Etsy, like Airbnb, like Turo, where your time is not directly correlated to how much money you can earn. And you can outsource a lot of the work, you can automate a lot of the work, and you can automate a lot of the processes in order to make as much money as possible. So to answer the question, can a gig worker replace their traditional 9 to 5 with a gig working job? And the answer is absolutely you can, 100%. But it really depends on how you're going to go about doing it. I believe that if you want to replace your 9 to 5 job with a gig working job, the only way to do that is to approach it as if you are running your own business. You can't think of yourself as a gig worker. Instead, I think you should think of yourself as a business owner. For example, I don't refer to my Turo business as like a Turo gig. I refer to it as my Turo business. I treat it like my business. And because of that, I've been able to really maximize my profits. Same goes for people who do Airbnb on a large scale, or Turo on a large scale, or Etsy on a large scale. Side gigs and the gig economy is an amazing way to make a lot of money, but it all depends on how you approach it. It of course also depends on things like your expenses and how much you expect to make from a gig economy job. If you are somebody who's okay with making $30,000 a year, then Uber and Lyft could be a great option for you. If you're somebody who's wanting to make 6 figures or really have no limit to how much you could make, then Uber or Lyft just simply is not a realistic option. But with that being said, you guys, I would love to hear your thoughts on this video. I think that the gig economy is incredibly interesting, and I think that the way that people go about making a lot of money in the gig economy is equally as interesting and as fascinating. So I would love to hear your thoughts on any sort of gig work or gig economy jobs you've done in the past and what the results of those were. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. I will see you guys in the next video.